Tonight on the Fifth Chapter, Tom Brady and the Buccaneers win Super Bowl 55 in blowout fashion. Dennis and Brian on the biggest takeaways from the game and whether Brady deserved the MVP. The Derrick Rose era comes to a close in Detroit. So did Troy Weaver get enough for Rose or just send him away for nothing? And what's next for the Pistons? And less than a week after failing to reach an agreement, the players and owners of Major League Baseball come together to support Manfred Ball. But was it a good move for 2021? Join the conversation by commenting live on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch. This is the Fifth Chapter with Dennis Fithian and Brian Chapman.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be it true, just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman, Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.
That's right. Welcome to the Fifth Chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for 5 more fantastic chapters in episode 77. And Dennis, the question I have for you is, did you hear the rest of the story about the Super Bowl streaker?
I think so, that it was all planned and he was making some money off of it.
That's right. I'll put it up on the screen so everybody can see. This is from TMZ. The streaker claims he won $375,000 for the stunt, saying he bet on himself. We all know there's lots of props out there about whether there's going to be things like a streaker, how much they're going to talk about Giselle. Look at this. On Bovada, they offered 750 to 1 odds that there would be a streaker. And he decided to bet on that. And he also had friends go to Vegas and bet on the prop bets. And he said that he won $375,000 by just betting that someone would streak and then choosing to make sure that he streaked during the game.
Yeah, I don't believe him since the books only take like max like $200. I don't know how many friends and relatives that he would have to place those kind of bets, but like, I don't know, 50, 100 people. So I don't believe him, but maybe he made a little bit. Maybe he made $3,000.
Yeah, it's the story says, and I'll put it back up so everybody can see it, from TMZ. He called up everyone he knew and had them bet on someone storming the field. Then he got tickets to the game and recruited a buddy to serve as a decoy. Andrej says once security was distracted by his pal, he ran onto the field, and the rest is history. The streaker, you can see him right there with his hands in the victory salute, Yuri Andrade. So, look, I mean, the sports books in Las Vegas might have their maximum of $100 or $50, but if he's going online and doing it on Bovada like he said he was, I don't know if they have limits, and if they do, if he's got 100 people betting that he's going to do it, then that's a heck of a lot of money. And I'm sure that he split the money with them, but that's a heck of a stunt.
Yeah, well, he got closer to the end zone than the Chiefs did, so I'll give him that.
Yeah, like that's the other thing. If you're going to streak on the field and you're going to get all the way down to the 1, why slide? You've got to get into the end zone.
He did break a tackle. One tackle was kind of impressive. So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that was maybe the Chiefs will hire him or sign him for their offense next year because they certainly need some help in the Super Bowl. Definitely want to, though, thank everyone who's watching episode 77. Thanks to all who are watching on YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Of course, you can check that out. You can download the podcast about an hour and a half, 2 hours after the end of each show. It's usually available at around 11 o'clock. And also want to make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in each show. You can participate by sending in your feedback via YouTube or via Facebook during the course of the show. Dennis will be reading it live. Now, you want to know what the heck we're talking about during the course of today's show? Let's take a look at today's book. In the second chapter, Megatron gets into the Hall of Fame on the first try. Did he deserve it? And is he really patching things up with his former and only team, the same old Lions? In the third chapter, the Derrick Rose era comes to an end, and J. Cole's favorite basketball player is now a Detroit Piston, but will he be solid for the Pistons, and was it a good move by Troy Weaver? In the fourth chapter, Manfred Ball is back. That's all I'll say. And in the fifth chapter, we'll try to win you guys some money with the major wager. But Dennis, let's start off with the first chapter. And that takes us to Super Bowl 55. You picked the Chiefs to win. I picked the Chiefs to win. And we were both dead wrong, and as wrong as we could be, because it was a 31-9 blowout by the Buccaneers. The Chiefs scored first, but it was a field goal. As you mentioned, they did not score a touchdown all game. The streaker got closer to the end zone than Mahomes and the Chiefs. Mahomes threw 2 interceptions and obviously no touchdowns. Brady, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And because he was the quarterback, he obviously won the MVP of the Super Bowl, because apparently that's what you have to be. If you're the Super Bowl quarterback of the winning team, you win the MVP. Also of note, the myth of Ndamukong Suh became the reality of Ndamukong Suh, because he led that Buccaneers defense with 1.5 sacks and won his first Super Bowl championship. The former Lion goes from the myth of Ndamukong Suh to the reality of Suh. Dennis, now that Super Bowl 55 is in the books, what are your top takeaways from the big game?
Well, that Kansas City looked so bad and that I whiffed so badly on my prediction. But, the part about not having both of your tackles and having a makeshift offensive line, you got to have time, even if you have Patrick Mahomes, and that was put out there and you could see it. Like, if you're able to get pressure with only your 4 down linemen, and you can double cover Tyreek Hill. You got Levante David, and also shading some coverage over to Travis Kelce. Then you can disrupt that Kansas City offense that hasn't been done. To be honest, with Patrick Mahomes at the controls, he's been awesome. That was the first time that that he wasn't, and that was the big shocker. I thought that they would devise some kind of plan, some kind of rollouts that. Maybe the offensive line over a long haul, you think like, that was going to catch up to him. But I thought for one game, they would be able to do it. Maybe because Andy Reid's son and the terrible accident that happened back in Kansas City, maybe that had everybody distracted. I don't know, but that did look like the same Kansas City team that I had watched with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback the entire time he's been with the Chiefs.
Yeah, you're right about that. And it kind of brings me back to the discussion that we had on Thursday about whose injuries would be a bigger factor. And you were right about the Chiefs' injuries being a bigger factor, because we talked about how there were multiple guys who were either skipping practice or limited in practice on the Buccaneers defense. And then you had the offensive line shuffle with the Chiefs, with the 2 starting tackles out, with 2 7th-round picks that were starting, with a guy who was waived late in the season starting in the interior of the offensive line. And that was certainly a bigger factor, because it was just like you said. We knew for a fact that the 2 tackles weren't playing, and we hear all the time about guys skipping a practice or being limited in practice and looking 100% on game day, and that's how that Tampa Bay Buccaneers look. They look 100% on game day, and the Chiefs' backup offensive linemen or shuffled up offensive linemen look like they could have been backups in the CFL. Like, you would think that even if you were not a starter in the NFL at left tackle or right tackle, that you'd be able to put up a better protection for Patrick Mahomes than they put out there. But to have Patrick Mahomes pressured a record 29 times, a Super Bowl record 29 times, was stunning. I also heard a stat that Tom Brady was pressured on 13% of his dropbacks, and Mahomes was pressured on 53% of his dropbacks. That's not even professional. I get not being a starter, but if you're a professional, if you're good enough to be on a practice squad, that group of individuals, I don't care if you're going up against Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White for the entire game, you can't give up 53% pressures. But that's what happened. He was running for his life the whole game, and like you mentioned, I think the Buccaneers only blitzed 5 times. It was a 4-man rush the entire time, and they still were getting to Patrick Mahomes. It was an embarrassment, and it was because of the holes on that offensive line.
Yeah, I also think Mahomes' toe, and I know they said he's going to have surgery for a turf toe. They announced that today. And you could see in the first drive or two when they ended up getting some field goals that he was pretty handy on 3rd down, taking off and running. and I think that toe caught up to him as well.
Well,
No
he wasn't running at a
protection.
full sprint. That was not full Patrick Mahomes speed.
Yeah, I'll buy it, but he did get a couple first downs there. But then, and I know he had to do all those twisting and turning, throwing the ball crazy all over the place, and actually, hitting guys in the mask. Maybe it could have been a different game. On the Chiefs not scoring any touchdowns. Now, if I just had somebody had given me I don't know, $100,000 and said, just place it, spray the board on a bunch of props, that you think that might be able to happen, it could have been 150 to 1 that the Chiefs wouldn't score a touchdown. I don't think I would have put any money on that one. I'd have been like, well, that's a loser for sure. So I don't know. So, and on the flip side, Brady just made it look so easy. It's not like he played great, but you know what? He had time. He had a running game. He had a nice offensive game plan that Byron Leftwich called for him. Nice little screens over here. Oh, yeah, let's spread it around. Oh, here's Gronk. Here's Brown. Here's Evans. Oh, Kansas City is the most penalized team in the playoffs and one of the most penalized teams in the regular season. Let's go after them. We're one of the least penalized teams. Don't be shocked. If you shouldn't be shocked that Kansas City got called for a bunch of penalties. They've been called all year long for a bunch of penalties. They're the most penalized team in the playoffs, so that wasn't a big surprise to me. Well, it wasn't a big surprise that the Chief fans were crying about that either. And were a couple of them little ticky tack or nickel dime, but you know what? I think their reputation preceded them on some of that.
I actually didn't realize that they were the most penalized team, but I still thought that. One of my other takeaways was that while you saw the Buccaneers defense rise to the occasion and take advantage of that weak offensive line, the Chiefs choked. Even if you are the most penalized team, 11 penalties for 120 yards. It seemed like most of them were on defense. They had that really stupid one on the field goal attempt that basically gave up 4 points because they lined up off sides, and the very next play, a touchdown pass, I think it was to Gronk. So that was a 4-point penalty. For the Chiefs to commit all those penalties. And I didn't understand people saying that they were ticky-tack. They all looked legitimate to me. I was rooting for the Chiefs to win that game, and time after time, I was not sitting in front of the TV saying, oh, that's BS, that's a bad call, they just want to give the Super Bowl trophy to Tom Brady again. I kept on thinking, why do you guys keep on cheating? Why do you guys keep on hitting these receivers downfield or whatever the case may be? Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, they, not only did they have the great pass rush, but they had the 7 in protection, and Mahomes couldn't find anybody. And when he did try to find someone, you saw those linebackers or you saw those defensive backs reaching across and batting passes away. So, yeah, I liked what I saw out of them defensively, and it looks like Dennis is...
I thought one from Chris.
Oh, okay.
About catchable on my back.
Yeah, you froze up for a second. Go ahead.
I was making such a great point, and I got froze up. That's what happens. A lot of those times when you see those uncatchable passes, people are always, you see them over there on the sideline. They made an emphasis this year. I think they got together and said, look, these guys are such incredible athletes. We can't really tell if it actually is, a catchable pass or not. So they let that go a lot this year. But it's like people just started watching football for the first time at the Super Bowl, it's an uncatchable pass. It's like, okay, well, they've been calling that all year. So I don't know. I thought that one thing that I know, if you bet on a team, you can hear me all right, champ?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing, if I was waiting for you to interrupt me or something to say no, but I must be making some good points.
Yeah.
If you bet on a team or you're a big-time fan of a team and your team is losing and you're getting penalties called on it, you're going to think the refs ripped you off. You just can guarantee that. And, that held true on Sunday.
Well, and that's the thing is I bet on the Chiefs. I didn't put a whole lot on them, but I bet I wasn't like that mattress guy that put $3 million on the Chiefs, but I bet on the Chiefs. So you would think that I might be biased in some sort of way, but I looked at that, like the pass that everyone thought was uncatchable. I thought there was a chance that he could have caught that if he could have had the ability to lay out or jump up, but he didn't have that chance. The other penalties, I didn't think that they were all that ticky-tack. I thought they were, I thought they were as blatant as the holding call that I thought was the pass interference call that should have been called defensive holding at the end of the Buccaneers versus Packers game in the fourth quarter. I didn't really have a problem with them. I just thought that it was carelessness on the part of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I'll say one other thing, takeaway with regards to this game was that because of Kansas City's offensive line problems and the way that Tampa Bay took advantage of those problems, it just made for a very disappointing game. It was not as entertaining. Like a lot of us thought going in, we were going to have two high-powered offenses and the game could get into the high 20s or 30s, and we didn't get that because of Kansas City's offensive line. It was pretty clear to me that the Buccaneers were going to win at halftime when it was 21-6, and then when Gronk caught that touchdown like midway to the third quarter to make it 28-9, it was over, but there was still plenty of time left. Like I was screwing around on my phone in the fourth quarter, not really paying much attention because it was such the last quarter was just not that entertaining. And then I looked at some of the numbers, and it's not like the Chiefs lit it up offensively. They had the Buccaneers. They only had 340 yards of offense, and they were actually outgained by the Chiefs, who had 350 yards of offense. It just was not nearly as entertaining as really anybody hoped. And obviously you can't blame the Buccaneers and say that you guys should have made the game more entertaining. They took advantage of it, but it was disappointing from an entertainment standpoint. Even if I wanted the Chiefs to win, I would have liked some suspense, but there wasn't any.
Yeah, not unless you splashed the pot on a bunch of prop bets or played a one-game fantasy that came right down to the end.
Yeah.
Sometimes things like that can happen. But, overall, I mean, it was a dud. We get that. If you're just tuning in right now and you want to be involved and tell us what you thought of the Super Bowl, well, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitch, you're on the live chat on YouTube. Just get out there, throw some questions, put an opinion on there, and we will read them. Like right now, let's go to YouTube. And Brian Jelinek, the intern, he did pick Tampa Bay, and he's giving himself props because he says, I was right in all caps.
He was.
Yes, you were, Jelinek. That was the right pick. You picked Tom Brady and the Bucs. You look like $1 million, man, because I did not see that. And I thought they're a bunch of Michigan homers or Brady homers, and I just thought, all right, I'm listening to you guys, but I really wasn't. But let's see. Sideshow Sports. This is Raj. Nice video. Nice. I saw one of your videos, Raj. It was pretty sweet out there with your Pittsburgh Penguins stuff on. But I wanted to look at this and say his question is one that I've seen come up a lot. Should the Lions make a move on Sue in free agency? Chap?
They can try, but Ndamukong Suh, a.k.a. $UH, is about his money. We know that for certain because when he left Detroit, he became the highest paid defensive player ever when he went to the Dolphins, and he got a big contract with the Rams, and he got a decent contract with the Buccaneers. So he wants his money, and the Lions are cash-strapped. And number two, he's been going from team to team trying to win. His last year with the Lions was a fairly good year when they won 11 games. Then he went to Miami more so to get money than to win. Then he went to the Rams and went to the Super Bowl. And now he's with the Buccaneers and he won. I don't think that now that he has a Super Bowl and a bunch of money that he's going to want to go to a rebuilding, losing team to push them from 3 wins to 5 wins. That's not happening. They can try, but it would be pointless. And on top of that, if they succeed in getting Ndamukong Suh, knowing how much it would cost to bring him here, you'd have to really start to question the credibility of the new front office.
Yeah, there's 0% chance that Ndamukong Suh is going to be playing for the Lions. I know he did go to Lincoln, Nebraska, play his college. But, after Detroit, he couldn't wait to get out of here. Had the poison pill and everything. To the Dolphins, warm weather and cash. L.A., warm weather, cash, Bucks, same thing. So, you could say if he was at the end and the Lions were, in a one player away, you thought on defense, you could say, hey, man, just go for it. Get somebody like Ndamukong Suh, pay, a premium for him, and then maybe you would have a shot. But, the Lions – it's it's the myth of Sue. I see a lot of this the myth of the Lions. I know they got Jared Goff. Jared Goff, everybody would admit, is like a poor man's Matt Stafford. They have downgraded at quarterback. They have called it a rebuild themselves. Retooled. I don't like the word rebuild, which means a tank. I would any Lion fans are like, yeah, let's sign this the off season, and I don't blame anybody because usually the off season, that's what you do. You start talking about signing people, and maybe you have a shot, at surprising everybody. I don't think there's any path to be any surprise for the Lions.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a surprise if they win more than 4 or 5 games. I think it'll be a surprise if Jared Goff, looks like he's a top 15 quarterback. I expect him to look like he's a top 20 quarterback. So, they said it themselves. I don't expect any splashy free agents. They'll be stupid if they do anything that's going to affect their cap into 2023. So, I expect kind of a bunch of no-name, low-cost
guys that want a job,
agents.
like the Tigers have been the last few
job.
years. The Tigers they need to fill up a roster, so they go bring in a guy like Ivan Nova. That's what you're gonna get, guys like that.
Right, and unless it's a Galladay where they think they could pay him and they could put money that's kind of front loaded where he'll be a deal. When you get to 3 years, I mean, that's one possibility. Or thinking that you might be able to trade for him. Or trade him to get something in 3 years for him. That's the only way. I don't see this team doing anything. A bunch of patchwork. I would say young players that you're trying to get that all eyes will be on 2023. How many times do you have to hear people say they're playing the long game? I'm not bashing Raj or something. Like, this is what we normally do, but I don't look for anybody that you think I don't think there's going to be people after free agency. And you'll really know on the draft if they take a quarterback at 7 because they're not going to plan on playing them.
Yeah, look, fans like to be optimistic about what their team is going to do during the offseason in terms of splashes. It's the draft. That's all you got. When March comes and free agency begins, don't expect anything. You already got one splash, which was the trade. Lions fans like that. And you're going to have another splash with your number 7 pick or whatever they do in the draft, and that's it. So you don't get a free agency. You don't get that. If you get it, then something crazy would have happened. But you got the trade, you're going to have the draft, and that's it. And it's going to lead to a bad season.
Right, and that's what they want. So I think you should just prepare for that. It's not,
Yes.
Chapman, I know he's always negative about the Lions. We get that, but this Brady should. All right, I will. Yeah, Gronk could have been the MVP.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that.
You could have. Oh, it was about Brady being picked MVP.
Okay.
Yeah, you could have given it to Gronk. You could have given it to White. You could have given it to Levante David, who shadowed Kelsey. You could have given it to Shaq Barrett.
How about Devin White? I mean, could have given it to him, the linebacker. Could have given it to Sue,
yes.
who was who led the team with 1.5 sacks. It was disappointing that they just decided to give it to him because he's the GOAT and he's the quarterback. I think a lot of journalists are lazy. They just say, hey, a team won. They had 30 some odd points. Therefore, let's give it to the quarterback. Not that Brady sucked, because he wasn't. He didn't suck. But was he the most valuable player? No.
There have probably been 5 or 10 Super Bowls where you're there and that they just handed it to the quarterback when there were plenty of other guys. So,
and it happens with a lot of awards. I think most people agreed that Aaron Rodgers deserved the award this year. But for the Heisman Trophy, it's almost always a quarterback. This year it wasn't. It was Devontae Smith, but it's almost always a quarterback. And if somebody goes to the Heisman Trophy ceremony that's not a quarterback, and certainly if they're a defensive player, they might as well treat it as if they won the Heisman because they know the quarterback's going to win.
Keith says, right, the game was not very entertaining, nor were the commercials. Were you entertained by any of the commercials?
Yeah, they weren't great, but I was entertained by a few of them. My favorite was the Rocket Mortgage Pretty Sure commercial. And I also like the Drake from State Farm commercial. And actually, one of the surprising things about that was it was clear that the reason that Drake hasn't been putting out much new music lately is because he's been working out. Because the first thing I noticed was wow, Drake got big.
That's a puffy coat, dude. Come on. That's just a puffy coat.
Maybe, but he looked jacked. And then the other thing is, usually when I see trailers for movies, during the Super Bowl. I'm always thinking like I don't want to see a trailer, but I was actually intrigued by the trailer for Old.
Yeah, that was like a scary. That looked like a scary movie.
Yeah,
I
like
was a
all
little
these
surprised.
kids turning into like middle-aged people or young adults. That was intriguing.
Yeah, you know what? I laughed out loud at the M&M commercial where the guy spilled some things on him, a couple other things, popped the blue gun and everything else. So I laughed a little bit at that. So no, that was about it. I want to go back to the old days. Give me some, some horses and give me some dogs in there.
Bud Wise or Bud
Oh yeah, or the
Wise or yep.
commercials jumped the shark 20 years ago. I know, like, you're younger, like, what? I miss the Super Bowls used to suck, and then the commercials were kind of good, and then all of a sudden the Super Bowl took like center stage, and there were like really good games into the second half, and it was like, the commercials are like played out. This time around, the game sucked, and the commercials kind of sucked too. So
Yeah.
that whole part. All right, we have more feedback. Kenneth says the halftime show was boring. All right, I got to just tell you, the one thing about the Super Bowl, Chap and Kenneth, is that, like, I tape it, and sometimes I watch it back. I used to run it right back and take notes the second time, just watch the game as the first time. I didn't do that this time, but I stay in my seat to watch all of the commercials. So when it finally does get to the halftime, if I like the weekend, I mean, it's just not really my thing. I didn't know anything about them. So I took off, to just get a little stretching and grab some food and get ready for the second half. But it takes a lot. If you're just going to sit there and actually watch the game and watch the commercials, then I'm going to get to halftime and I'm going to sit there for another 25, 30 minutes watching the weekend who, bores me and, I don't like any of his music.
Yeah, I like his song Starboy, but I like some of the features that he does. But I'll give the Super Bowl a pass for this year because due to the pandemic, they didn't have the same type of display that they usually have, and he was just up in the rafters or whatever. I hardly ever watched the Super Bowl halftime show. The last great one that I remember was actually Madonna a few years ago. I thought that she was outstanding. But to be honest, during the halftime show, I was shaving my head. And I peeked over. I came out of the bathroom and was shaving my head a little bit when he performed the first verse or whatever of Starboy. And then I went back into the bathroom and continued to shave my head with it playing in the background. But, I'm not interested.
Little TMI there, but I'll give it to this for the weekend.
I said my head.
Yeah, you know what? He was in, I forgot what series I was watching. He made a guest appearance in, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's the weekend, pretty cool," and everything else. And then, the first thing that I noticed about him back in the day was, his unique hair. But, he was a real trailblazer. Like, you could find at least one of those weekend hairdos on 2 or 3 players. So. I mean, he was a real trendsetter that way. I don't know anything really about his music, but
yeah,
there you go.
He's all right.
Let's see. Everything was boring about the game. However, I'm a big supporter of the weekend. That's from Jelinek. There you go. Jelinek, there's somebody that likes it. Roger says Jared Goff is more accomplished than Stafford. The Lions could be sneaky good this year. Yeah, I don't think so, Roger.
No.
I think that you're right. He is more accomplished.
Yes.
He went to a Super Bowl. He's won playoff games.
Yeah.
He was
two-time Pro Bowler.
Yeah, 3 years ago they were the number 1 offense in the NFL, and then the next year they were the number 2 offense, and he was the quarterback. So yeah, he is way more accomplished than Matt Stafford. But I don't know. Did the Rams look at it and say, "Hey, we got an accomplished quarterback"? And not that I think Stafford's great. I think he's good. And I think they think that if they think he's better than Goff, then what are we really dealing with here? Goff can't throw the ball down the field. I mean, that's a hole in his game. Plus, he became Mr. Turnover. Maybe the Lions can fix that. But if he's even a top 15 quarterback, I'll be surprised. Not shocked. I would be shocked if he was a top 10 quarterback.
I think he can be top 15, just like Matt Stafford was. I don't expect him to be top 10. And once again, one of the big reasons why I don't expect him to have big numbers in the 2021 season is because the team is going to be terrible, and his weapons are going to be significantly worse than Stafford's are, because I think that Amendola, Jones, and Galladay are all going to be gone. And even if Galladay sticks around, if Jones and Amendola are gone, and your number 2 receivers Quintez Cephas, or some guy you pick in the second round, or some fourth receiver from some other team that you can just barely fit under the cap, then he's not going to have much of anything to work with.
Get the Hawk.
Okay,
All
Hawkinson. Right. There you go.
Ishmael says, yes, I believe the Lions will get into the playoffs this coming season. Football teams get good overnight.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think they're trying to. That's the part. Like, sure, you go out, do great in free agency, you do great in the draft. I remember the Saints a couple years ago. They came up huge, like they were the first 5 or 6 picks. You know, they all played. I remember the Giants one year, all 7 players played and contributed. They ended up, winning the Super Bowl that year. Both times those guys did great in free agency. But the Lions came in, the part about we're playing the long game and we're retooling, to me, that is code word for we're not going to be any good next year. We are taking the long view of this. Long view is not we're trying to be sneaky good next year. I'll be shocked if Matt Stafford's a top 5 quarterback. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a top 10 quarterback. I'll be surprised if the Lions win 7 games next year. I would be shocked if they won 9 games. So. Yeah, my surprise and shock meter.
Yeah, I'm done addressing slappy talk for the Lions right now. Look, I've said enough. You said enough. I get the optimism, but there's no reason right now. I'm not addressing it.
Ishmael, sorry, it's not happening. All right.
Let's turn the pace of the second chapter.
Yeah, that's
good. If people want to talk about the Lions, here is an opportunity to talk about the Lions without having to go into slappy talk.
Right. Let's get to Megatron. Caluin Johnson, number 81 from Georgia Tech. He gets into the Hall of Fame on his first try. Chapman, did Megatron deserve it?
Yes, he absolutely deserved to be a Hall of Famer on the first try. And it was funny to hear over the last 5 years or so, all these people talk about how Caluin Johnson should be a Hall of Famer, but let's just wait a little bit, and maybe some other guys should get in first, and some other guys that didn't get on their first try took them their third or fourth try, and because Megatron only played 9 years, that's not long enough. We think he's a Hall of Famer. We know he's a Hall of Famer, but let's just pump the brakes. There was never a time, it's certainly in his last 5 or 6 years in the NFL, where I was thinking, is he a Hall of Famer or not? And the whole conversation about first ballot or not, you're either a Hall of Famer or you're not. And whenever I looked at Caluin Johnson, there was no doubt that he was a Hall of Famer. In 9 years, he was an All-Pro 3 times. He was a Pro Bowler in each of his final 6 years. He set the all-time single-season receiving yardage record. He passed the Hall of Fame test via the eye test by a wide margin all the time. The biggest player on the field, the fastest player on the field, usually the strongest player on the field. He caught passes in double teams. He caught passes in triple teams. He could win a game at times all by himself. And I get that he didn't win any playoff games because he played his entire career with the same old Lions, but he was a legend and an extremely popular player. And had he not played for the Detroit Lions, then there wouldn't have been any idiots around here talking about, well, yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, but let's just wait a little bit. Yes, he deserved to be a Hall of Famer. He deserved to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. There shouldn't have been any dispute about this. So I'm glad that one of my favorite players to watch in a Lions uniform of all time got in on the first try.
Yeah, I think it's fair to, when you were projecting whether he was going to get into the Hall of Fame, to say, you know what, Randy Moss didn't get in on the first try, neither did Terrell Owens. So you'd say, well, I like Caluin Johnson too. I thought he was a Hall of Famer, but I thought Moss and Owens were as well. And it could have been because of those guys' attitudes and how they treated the media or whatever else. It shouldn't happen that way, but I think that's what happened to those two guys, because certainly they're a Hall of Famer. And even though Megatron is trying to get that money in his pocket with the signing bonus that Rod Wood asked him about when he said he was retiring, the first thing, instead of congratulations, he was like, hey, you got that signing bonus for us? I think that, that's looked at as like there's some Lion fans, now that are against him. But man, he was a good dude. Like, he treated people well. He was really good off the field as well. And the 9 years, like, remember, the Lions had Megatron during the winless season, and he still was awesome in that year. And then when they had Stafford, it took a couple years, and then he was up. And I think you mentioned it. He made 4 All-Pro teams. And,
3.
Forget when I looked, I saw 4 today. Can we get a double check on that, Jelinek? I saw 4 today when I looked at. You know who else had 4? Charles Woodson. Everybody's talking about him being a shoo-in. Man, if you dominate for that long, the Pro Football Reference is what I looked at. Maybe I looked at it wrong.
I think that's what I looked at too. But yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first time that I made a mistake. But bigger, stronger, and faster, and a 3 or 4 time All-Pro. Yeah, to me, he's in, and he should have been in. And he always looked like he was a special player. There were a few times that I think I was at every home. Oh, maybe not the last year. Every home game that he played over his 9 years. There were a few games like where he would score. He's 80 yards down the field, then he would go up and like dunk the ball over the goalpost when you could still do that. You just watch, man. It was just like, damn. It was just like, I knew I was watching something special. Totally impressed, and always knew that one day he would be in the Hall of Fame. I see Chapman working those numbers. What do we got there?
Yeah. I did confirm that he was a 3-time All-Pro. 3-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler in 9 years.
I guess my eyes aren't working so good.
I mean, those are still awesome numbers, awesome statistics, and worthy of being in the Hall of Fame, and not to sit around and wait for him or wait for voters to decide to put him in. I think that that you could not watch Caluin Johnson's career and not be in awe. And then think about the last game that he played. He had 2 touchdown catches in that win against the Chicago Bears. It was a meaningless win 5 years ago that ruined some draft positioning, and had over 100 yards receiving. He looked good enough to be able to play multiple years after that. Now, we came to find out afterwards that not only did he not want to play for the Lions because they were losing, but also that he was in a great deal of pain, and he had to when he would wake up every day, he was shuffling to the bathroom because he couldn't even lift his knees up because he was in so much pain. And he said that if he was playing for a winning team, perhaps he would have been able to withstand the pain for another year or so, but he wasn't going to do that with the Lions. But for when he did play, skipping practice and whatever, make sure he was good for Sunday, he was a pleasure to watch. He was awesome, and he deserves to be in the first ballot. And you brought it up a minute ago about his dispute with the Lions, and what's interesting is that now that he has been inducted into the Hall of Fame, we find out that Caluin Johnson and the Lions are trying to patch things up, and it's a mutual move to try to patch things up. Here's an excerpt from a Detroit Free Press article on the matter. Caluin Johnson is quoted as saying, quote, "I really do hope this helps get the relationship patched up. I know that myself and Sheila Hemp, we've had some great conversations recently. It's been good to get to know her and really just have those face-to-face conversations. So I think that we're moving in the right direction." And then later in the article, it mentioned the conversation between him and Rod Wood a couple years ago, where Johnson says,
I like
quote,
those quotes.
"Yeah, I knew there was going to be a problem once Rod talked to me, and the first thing out of his mouth was like, 'Did you earn all your bonus?' I was like, oh bleep. I knew right then it was going to be a problem. I was like, all right then, I see how it's going to be." And we know that Dennis Fithian hates Rod Wood like he hates a Buckeye, and this is another reason to do so, I guess.
Well, I think he might be good as a accountant for the Lions, but when it comes to like PR and saying the right things, he always sticks his foot in his mouth. That was another example to me when I saw that quote. Like, that's the first thing you're going to say when you're Rod Wood.
Well, if you're an accountant, then you would understand why that'd be his first move. He's always thinking about money. It would not make financial sense for this guy who earned all this money for the Lions to keep his signing bonus. How about we get that back? And then Martha Ford, because she was the only owner at the time, will think of me really highly because I made money for her. That's what he was thinking because he's an accountant.
Well, right, but if he would have got the feel of the rest of the league, he would have gone out there and said, "Hey, you know what? What happened when Marshawn Lynch retired from the Seahawks? They gave him like $4 million. What happened when Romo had the back injury with the Cowboys? They took his signing bonus, and it was way more than what Calvin got. Andrew Luck, he kept like $10 million or something like that. So Calvin won 3, even though the fans turned against him and everything else, and got on the Lions' side." It was. I don't think it's. I noticed he didn't say anything about Rod Wood, going down on the field. But yeah, I mean the Lions, they should have taken care of this a long time ago. Every year I got to read another Dave Burkett story of Calvin Johnson or Calvin going on some podcast and everybody ripping the Lions. It's like, what are they thinking? And did they really want him to go into the Hall of Fame and be standing up there and not say anything about the Lions?
That's the key. Now there's a heck of a lot more pressure on the Lions to just cut the check because they don't want Calvin Johnson getting up, putting on that gold jacket and embarrassing the crap out of the team, talking about, "Oh, I'm glad to be in the Hall of Fame. I had so much fun playing in the NFL," and not mention the Lions at all. Or if he does mention the Lions, talk about them being a bunch of greedy bastards who took my $1.6 million. They want this, and they should want this to be a great situation for all sides. And the only way for that to happen, according to Calvin Johnson, is not for them to just have strong conversations where he gets to meet Sheila Ford Hamp. It's for them to cut that check. Like, they could have all these conversations about, "Oh, we're moving in the right direction," but the only way they're going to get there is if the money moves in the right direction. When the money moves in the right direction, Calvin Johnson will put that jersey back on and say, "Yeah, I can't wait to go to the Hall of Fame and put that gold jersey over my Honolulu blue and silver jersey. Otherwise, I'll go in and not mention you suckers, you losers at all."
No, you're right. That is the bottom line. That same story. I think the Burkett story with the Wood quotes in there about him asking him if he earned his bonus. It was also like, they came and knocked on his door. He said they asked him like, "Hey, were you surprised that you got it?" He said, "Yeah, I almost grabbed my gun."
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. Like, every time we hear about Calvin Johnson, since he's retired, it's been a podcast or he's been at a practice or something like that, and he's dogging the Lions and saying, "Where's my money?" The Lions have got to be sick and tired of that, and they do not want to have another story pop up the week before the Hall of Fame about that doesn't just go viral locally, but goes viral on NFL Network, on ESPN, about Calvin Johnson beef with the Lions, and look what he's saying about them now, and he's trying to convince players to not sign with the Detroit Lions, and you don't want to go there. They're a bunch of idiots. They need to fix this now that he's a Hall of Famer.
There's no doubt about that. If not, the narrative, and this is what it's been right up to right now, is that, hey, the Lions over the last 50 years, their 2 best players, Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, both of them left bitter with the franchise and wanted to get the hell out of Dodge. And, they had to take Barry to court to get his money, and then they finally gave him his money. And you know what? Barry says nice things about the Lions.
Yeah.
If they want Calvin to say nice things, could you imagine? If they don't get it done, every time they talk to him, they, "Well, what about your reputation? What about every interview is going to be like, I ain't saying nothing about the Lions."
Yeah. Next question.
Right. Yeah. So that's it. All right. Let's see what some of the people on the feedback are saying about Calvin Johnson. If you're on Facebook, you can leave an opinion or a question right there, or on Twitch or on YouTube. Here's some on YouTube. Keith, he doesn't need to speak for the Lions. He's a knucklehead and should not speak. Yeah, Calvin's not a knucklehead.
He's not a knucklehead.
No, he's a nice guy. He does great things off the field for the community. I don't know how much that stuff gets talked about it in practice. I saw, over the years, he's very accommodating with kids before the game, special needs and things like that. He could have shied away from a lot of that, but he was always there. I always saw Calvin. He liked doing that, and he was somebody that didn't seek the limelight that way. But I think you'll see more and more of those stories, especially if the Lions are able to cut him that check, and then they could actually say, you know what, Calvin, some of the people that actually worked with Calvin over the years that work with the Lions still, right, will be able to say, like, yeah, man, Calvin was always there for those kids, and he really was.
Yeah, he's not a jerk to the fans, wasn't a jerk to the media. He doesn't go around committing domestic violence or getting gun charges, or even though he has a gun, he doesn't go around getting criminal charges, and we're going to choose to call Megatron a knucklehead? Like there's because he wants his money from the Lions. Think about all the people out there that folks don't call knuckleheads, and then think about calling Caluin Johnson a knucklehead because he wants his $1.6 million.
Keith says also thought his nickname should have been Optimus Prime and not Megatron, since Prime defeated Megatron. I'll take your word for that. I never saw Transformers. Is that what I'm talking about here?
Yeah.
You know who gave him the nickname?
No.
Roy Williams.
Oh, well, yeah.
First down! Best thing he ever did. Let's see. Has anybody tried his weed out? I saw a picture of him standing in the...
I'm sure some people have, not me.
Yeah, tried some Megatron.
Mega weed. Not for me.
Paul W., college softball, college hockey, coming soon for the win. Yeah, I was looking at the Michigan softball schedule today. I'm looking forward to seeing them get back. And, yeah, hockey getting ready to start back up as well. He was talking Rod Wood, LOL. That's from Case Salty. And Jelinek pulling out the quote from Rod Wood. As most people have noted, I'm not a football guy. That is not in my background. That is an all-time Rod Wood quote.
Yeah, that is for certain. Are you ready to turn the page to the third chapter?
Yes.
All right, let's do so. And as we turn the page to the third chapter, that takes us to the NBA and to the Pistons. And a little side note, two of my best friends from college did a radio show with me on the NBA. It was called Crashing the Boards, and we're still friends to this day. One of them is a Cavs fan. The other is a fan of the New York Knicks. And we all thought this year that our trio of teams would be competing hard for the number one pick in the draft. Nobody had any expectations for any of those three teams. But the Pistons have gone all in on the number one pick from game one. The Cavs and Knicks, not so much. The Cavs are the number 10 seed, a game and a half out of the final playoff spot, and they might be getting Kevin Love back soon. The Knicks just dropped out of the playoffs with their last loss, but they have the 9 seed and are a half game out. And over the weekend, the Knicks waved the white flag on tanking for the top pick, and the Pistons, I think you could say, dove deeper into tanking when they engineered that trade. The Pistons send Derrick Rose to the Knicks for former lottery pick point guard Dennis Smith Jr., who is also a good friend of J. Cole. J. Cole raps about him on the Grammy-nominated song, I think it was Grammy Award-winning song, A Lot by 21 Savage. And the Pistons also got a 2021 second-round pick. So, Dennis, you look at that package, a former lottery pick from 2017 in Dennis Smith Jr. and a 2021 second-round pick for Derrick Rose. What kind of grade would you give the Pistons for this trade as the Derrick Rose era comes to an end?
Well, yeah, I'll give it a C. I mean, there were some things that I like about it, but Derrick Rose pretty much sped this thing up. Like, he demanded a trade, and it was like the Pistons had to do something. Like, they couldn't just have a bitter Derrick Rose, but they weren't going to get a first-round pick for him, so that would have been optimal. I think the other part is like the Pistons gave the Knicks a second-round pick in some deal over the years. If they would have been able to get their own second-round pick because they have the worst record in the league, it would feel like that was an end of the first rounder, like 33 or 34. Instead, I think they got the Charlotte pick, which is going to be down there. So I would have liked it, of course, better if they would have got their own second-round pick. That would have been the piece I would have liked as much. And, Dennis Smith Jr., I don't know what's happened to him. Like, he's fell off a cliff. I mean, he's got the skill set. If he can focus in, I think it's at least something like, it's not like the Pistons have. They got a lot of playing time, available. Go out there, let him roll, hand him the ball, and you know what? If they wanted to keep him for some kind of qualifying offer next year at like under $8 million, it sounds pretty heavy, but they're going to suck next year too. So if he shows anything, he could get that. So, there's some parts in there that I liked, and I liked Derrick Rose, but Derrick Rose finally was like, get me out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to give the Pistons a grade of a B because I think this is about as good of a trade as you can expect. And for them to get in the A range, then they'd have to get much better than I would expect, which is like what the Lions did when they traded away Stafford, because I didn't expect them to get a third and 2 first-round picks. I was talking to my dad after the trade, and he was surprised that the Pistons couldn't get a first-round pick, and he was saying, this is a guy who's playing at an all-star level. And I had to explain to him, not this year. Like last year, people were saying, could Derrick Rose sneak in the back door to the All-Star game, and was he one of the top snubs? And I think it was fair for him to not get in, but he was playing at a much higher level, 18.1 points a game, 5.6 assists per game, 49% from the field. This year, 4.2 points per game. That's almost 4 points less per game. 4.2 assists per game, 42.9% from the field. He's a bricklayer in ball shorts, as Pusha T would say. And you can't look at that and say that that's worthy of a number 1 pick. Additionally, Derrick Rose misses a lot of games due to load management and actual injuries. The Pistons have played 23 games, not including tonight, and Rose has played in just 15 games. Playing in 65% of your team's games when you're not even playing 30 to 35 minutes a night, that's not good enough. And you consider the fact that he's got an expiring contract. He's a rental player. Getting a guy who's trending toward being a bust in Dennis Smith Jr., who you hope you can get on the right track, and you hope he can stay solid, as J. Cole would put it, and getting a mid-second round pick is, I think, as good as you can get for him. You look at the Hornets, and that's the pick is going to be coming from them. They look like a playoff team, so I think that's going to be in the late 40s, maybe even around 50 if they really turn things up. So you're not going to get a great value there, but at least it's something. And, when you look at Dennis Smith Jr., he was on the all-rookie team back in the 2017-18 year, 15.2 points per game. Now, he's not a good shooter. His last couple years in New York, he's been shooting under 30% from downtown. And at the future, if in the next month he's behind Saban Lee on the depth chart, then you tried, but he's a bust, and it's time for him to go to play on LaMelo's old team in Australia.
Yeah, or get them down over to the G League, or if they're running. I'm not sure if they're running right now.
I don't think the G League bubble has started yet. But if I was Dennis Smith Jr., I wouldn't bother with the G League. I'd say I'll go to Australia because he'd probably have more success there.
Who knows? Not everybody wants to take off and head to Australia. All right, let's get to some of the feedback here. First of all, we get an update. MSU's up 40-36 in the second half, so it's a real nail biter if you took the Nittany Lions +3 in that game.
We are Penn State.
Raj says you guys see Blake Griffin getting dealt by the deadline. What do you think?
No. Look, Derrick Rose was having a disappointing start to the season. Blake Griffin is having an even more disappointing start to the season. He's not putting up the same numbers he was putting up a couple years ago when he was in the All-Star game. What is he averaging, like 12, 13 points a game? His field goal percentage is way down. He's obviously got load management and injury issues and a gigantic contract. I don't see a path toward a contender giving up anything of value. Like, what would be the reason for a contender to give up something in value for Blake Griffin to come off the bench for 15 minutes a game? Like, the Pistons would have to send them a first round pick just to take the salary. It just wouldn't make sense. You just have to sit there and wait for Blake Griffin's contract to disappear.
If a contender had a big that got hurt and had a gigantic contract, or another bad contract, maybe they would look at, if you could line that up, and they would give the Pistons a second rounder. But I don't see any situation like that next year. There's a possibility where if he played better and then you have an expiring contract, then it becomes more valuable. Mm-hmm. And
he's got to play better. Nobody's going to want a bad player. Yeah.
No, that's the bottom line. And then next year it becomes much more attractive because not only would you get a player that you think might be able to help you, but then you also have $40 million to play with at the end of the year, and that'll be an option. Or then he'll be they'll buy him out, which would be an option as well. And then you can get a second rounder sometimes in a buyout situation like that.
Yeah, Jeremy Grant has had a nice start to the season, and he's the best player on the team. But if he's the best player on the team by far, who's going to want him? And I'm looking at the numbers right now. Blake Griffin, 12.2 points per game, and a player efficiency rating of 9.99, which is worse than every Piston except for Saddiq Bey, obviously Killian Hayes, Sekou Doumbouya, and Saban Lee. So all the guys that were just drafted, except for Isaiah Stewart and Sekou Doumbouya, those are the only guys with lower player efficiency ratings than Blake Griffin. If you're a contender, why would you want to acquire a guy who right now is objectively terrible?
Well, he is a real professional. That's the one part, and you might see some upside there, and you might feel like it's an injury. But yeah, he's not going anywhere right now. Let's see. Keith says, Dennis, you really misread the posts, and I was calling Rod Wood a knucklehead, not Kelvin. Are you freaking kidding me? Sorry. I think Chapman
that changes things. Don't blame me.
I blame Chapman. Good trade for Detroit for a broken down Derrick Rose. That's from Kenneth. Did I read that one right, Kenneth? Or no, it's Keith. Keith, I love the trade. I think Killian Hayes is going to be a bust. I don't like the pick at the time. Watching him in limited action was very hard, but I think Smith can play and can be a steal. Well, the one thing we know about Killian, he's only 19. He didn't look good. And, Tyrese Halliburton, looks like he could be a future star. So, it's hard to have a good feeling about Killian Hayes. And, that was the one pick, that you're looking at. I look at all the other stuff like I'm not very impressed with anything. The pick is the one they had to get right here. But, if they find something with Smith Jr., then maybe you can start saying some things about Troy Weaver in a positive way. But, not so much right now. He's getting about a C, too.
Yeah. Just he made all those trades to shake up the roster, and we liked that. But 5-18 and not really anything to look forward to outside of more big fantasy nights out of Jeremy Grant. It's looking really bleak right now.
No, they're no fun to watch. But you know what? Tanking. It was kind of like the Lions. They told you that this is what it was going to be. So the only thing like Grant, that's fine that he's out there. I'm not setting a schedule to watch Jeremy Grant.
No.
Play for the Pistons and, the team fight and, lose by 10. Watch Blake Griffin throw up a bunch of line drives. It was the pick at 7, that you had to, like if they had the Halliburton and they were doing this, or if Hayes was playing well, you'd say, all right, they found a star here. Maybe
exactly.
There's a little something, but.
Well, it's also the 16 and the 19 picks because they weren't just sitting there with those picks. They acquired those picks. So Troy Weaver said, hey, I like these two guys. We got to put ourselves in position to get these two guys. And you got Isaiah Stewart who's committing fouls left and right, and Saddiq Bey who's just not doing a whole lot. And I mentioned that he's the least efficient of the rookies. Or I guess Isaiah Stewart is the most efficient, but Saddiq Bey is not very efficient either.
Yeah, I'm giving Stewart a pass because he's 19, just like I was going to do it for Killian Hayes and just like I'm doing for Doumbouya. But, Bey, there's nothing to write home about. It's not like I watch him and think, ooh.
And he was at Villanova for 4 years, so he doesn't fall into the Dennis Fithian 19-year-old excuse group.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He's been nothing to write home about. All right. And let's go to the next chapter.
Yeah, let's turn the page now to the 4th chapter.
Oh, boy, the one that you've been waiting for all night. Major League Baseball. About 2 weeks until pitchers and catchers, but they came out today, and they got some changes, Chap. The ones you're talking about. Spoiler, I like all 3. Chapman, are you with me?
No, I'm not with you even 1%. This is more Manfred Ball. It's fine. As I was pretty. I wouldn't say I was thrilled because last week when we were talking about this, I said it was 50-50. It was 50% good and 50% bad news. 50% good news was that we weren't going to have the Manfred Ball changes of a sticking a man on second base and 7-inning doubleheaders and all that stuff. The bad news was that they could not come to an agreement. And now we find out today that yesterday, that the two sides came to an agreement, and the agreement was for more Manfred Ball. 7-inning doubleheaders, sticking a man on second base. I absolutely hate that because it's not baseball. The 7-inning doubleheaders, that's what I did in high school when we would have Saturday doubleheaders for Detroit Country Day. We had 7-inning doubleheaders, but these are Major League Baseball players, and they're going to play a high school schedule. Sticking a man on second base, that's a stupid idea that you might come up with when you're playing T-ball with your friends in the backyard, and you got ghost runners. No NL in the no DH in the National League. I'm fine with that because we've had that for years. No playoff expansion is good because I don't want average teams getting in. I like that only good teams and great teams get in, and sometimes good teams don't get in. But it just seems to me like baseball keeps on ramming a Louisville Slugger into their own junk. I don't understand why the Players Association would let a guy who doesn't like baseball continue to put this stuff out there. Like I heard Dusty Baker, who's obviously not part of the Players Association, he was quoted by the Associated Press as saying that these Manfred Ball changes are going to save pitching, and he said, quote, "Besides, what else are you going to do?" Isn't that why they had taxi squads? So that you could have additional players in case you want to, in case you have a doubleheader or there's a COVID-19 outbreak, you bring up somebody from the taxi squad. You have these expanded rosters. I would rather see two teams bring up a random prospect from the minors and have a 9-inning game if there's a doubleheader than have a 7-inning game and then, you got a guy who's your number 5 starter. Usually it's a struggle for him to get through 6 innings, but he gets through 5 and a third, and then you only have to patchwork through an inning and 2/3 to finish the game. And right when you get to the most dramatic part of the game, oh, it's already over. I just absolutely hate this crap, and it sucks that now the players have caved into this. This wasn't just a Manfred Ball mandate. They agreed to it. So, like, my biggest fear is that this is not just for 2021. They're going to have Manfred Ball be the land of the law for years to come, and Manfred will have completely, gotten he would have completely molded baseball into a disaster.
Yeah, well, one thing about the players is, so you're saying, hey, take an extra 2 innings off, you get paid the same amount of money. Actually, take an extra 4 innings off, and you get paid the same for 2 games. Yeah, what's not to like about that? Work less, get paid the same. I can see that from the players. The one thing heading into last year, I said that I thought it was ridiculous with the man on second base, but it was a pandemic, so let's try some things. And all along when they talked about speeding up the game, I was like, you know what, make it a 7-inning game. That'll speed it up. And watching the games last year, actually, I listened to 90% of the games because I didn't like watching the empty stadiums. Maybe that'll be different this year. Around the radio, I couldn't tell. It kind of seemed like the old times, pre-pandemic. I couldn't tell the difference unless they were saying anything. So, and most of the time they didn't. I found that I liked the 7-inning games. Yeah, I mean, it's way different. Like in the 5th inning, it feels like, man, it's the 8th or whatever else. So it was an adjustment. But I liked it, and I liked how quick, bam, bam, you could get, 2 full games in like that. I actually enjoyed it, and I liked the man on second base. I know it's a gimmick, but, you suddenly, you've got a lot of different things that you're thinking about. Pitchers already, thinking about what's going on. They're already thinking about how to get the guy over. I like it got the wheels spinning for everybody, so I like both of those. And the third one is one that I really thought that they had to do. I don't know where you fall on this one, but a couple of years ago, baseball took over the manufacturing of their baseballs.
Oh, yeah.
And since then, the balls started flying out of the ballpark, and you would even see guys take like little half cuts out of the zone, and the announcer well, that's just going to be a lazy fly ball. That's gone. Even the guy in the whole play, it's like, wait a second, that wasn't a home run swing. It was like a little half cut. Little chopper to the outfield, and next thing you know, it was flying, and you could see it in the minor leagues. I think they had the minor league balls in before they went to the major leagues, and these guys were crushing them. and you just had to do something there. I know, it gets down where the players are juiced. Now they had the balls are juiced, but you just got to have it where you're not watching and you see some, punch and Judy hitter, hitting one out that's going to be a routine, fly ball to right field. Next thing you know, it's flying over the guy's head 30 feet. They really did need to deaden the ball, and, we'll see what kind of effect they had. But you can just tell by watching a game when guys swing, sometimes they're close, but, man, they looked like they were going to be routine fly balls, and these guys were, rounding the bases. It was 10 rows up. It's like, this is crazy. So they had to do something.
Well,
there.
and I there's a story from ESPN.com you can look at, and I'll put it up on the screen for everybody, and you can see right there, report MLB slightly deadening baseball amid years-long home run surge. And I think the first key there is this first word that says report. This is not Major League Baseball and Rob Manfred announcing we are deadening the baseball. Now, perhaps they leaked this story out, but this was uncovered by the Associated Press. Additionally, the story says MLB anticipates the changes will be subtle, and a memo to teams last week cites an independent lab that found the new balls will fly 1 to 2 feet shorter on balls hit over 375 feet. So I did some math before the show. If it's I just split the difference. If it's a foot and a half shorter, then you're talking about a ball that's going to fly 0.4% shorter. Now, that doesn't sound like my idea of deadening a baseball. I think it does make sense for them to try to do something to address the way baseball has been headed for the last couple of years, which is everybody just getting up there and swinging for the fences. And I don't care if you got a guy that's striking out 35% of the time, because if you can hit 30 home runs, then the analytics say that makes it easier for you to win a game. It makes sense to try to do what helps you win a game, but it makes the game less entertaining and less interesting when there's either a strikeout or a home run. Strikeouts are fun if they're for your pitcher, and home runs are fun because all the guys that are on base come in immediately. But when you have runners on base because they hit a single or a double or a walk or a triple, that creates drama, because you're thinking, all right, we got to get this guy in that's already on base. Or if your team is in the field, we got to make sure that the tying run that's on second base doesn't come in via just a single. I think that what I'd like to see, which is not going to happen because it would cost too much money, is for the fences to be pushed back 50 or 10 to 15 feet, because then you wouldn't see guys hitting little bloopers that just keep on carrying and the wind pushes it out. You wouldn't see little stick figures hitting the ball out 20 times a year. They would say, because I can't hit home runs, I have to focus more on line drives, and that creates more action. But that's just not feasible because it would cost too much money. But I mean, for the minuscule change of a ball flying 1 to 2 feet shorter over a span of at least 375 feet, a 0.4% deader baseball, I don't think is going to make that much of a difference.
We'll see how that ends up working itself out. We know there won't be in the doubleheaders any late inning games because they'll be done by 7 innings, so you don't have to worry about that.
The other thing is the report said that the ball is going to be 2.8 grams lighter, and the league doesn't expect it to change the pitcher velocity. And that doesn't make sense, because pitchers and all players are used to the feel of a baseball and how it spins, how it comes off their fingertips. And I have to imagine that if the ball is lighter, it will affect the players. And you just don't see sports leagues affecting their ball that often. Like I remember a couple of years ago, maybe it's 5-10 years ago now, the NBA experimented with a new basketball, and the players complained bitterly in the first 3-4 weeks because it was cutting up their fingers, and they went back to the regular basketball. But you don't hear about the NFL changing the football, or I think I heard a story about how the NHL was experimenting with a puck that had a chip in it, but it wasn't sliding across the surface the same way, so they scrapped it. And now baseball is going to go with a lighter baseball? It seems pretty strange to me.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens in spring training. The players, they're not going to be quiet if they don't like the baseballs. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, some feedback on baseball. Kenneth Johnson says, all of this is not baseball. Jelinek is not very happy with the changes. People need to be pissed off with MLBPA. He retracted one of his messages and then said, we need Dennis's screen to freeze again with that take. Uh,
Or you could put Still Life Dennis back up.
there you go. I'm gonna put a thumbs up on the show. First one. There you go. Like the video. Okay, yeah, let's get to that major wager coming up in our last chapter.
That's right, the 5th chapter, and that's an opportunity for us to share with you what we think would be some big bets out there to get you guys some money now that sports betting certainly is legal here in the state of Michigan. We don't have to remind everyone what you bet on for the Super Bowl because both of us picked the Chiefs. But what are you looking at tonight?
Well, I looked to the game that was up at East Lansing. Michigan State was laying 3 points, and I know Michigan State hasn't been playing well, but they have to have this game tonight. So I looked at that and said, I like the desperation play. I'm going to bet Michigan State. You didn't like that bet.
Well, when you first texted me, and just so everybody know that he did text me, he texted me that I don't know, like 10 hours ago. So this is not just something that he's making up as he goes along. I didn't know because my first instinct is when people bet on Penn State basketball to lose, that's a good decision because we're not a basketball school. But at the same time, Michigan State has been absolutely horrendous. But a couple of hours ago, as I was looking through information to see, what should I bet, what should I not bet, I remember seeing a tweet from earlier in the day about how Penn State's strength of schedule had been so amazing. And I looked and I read the article, and it said, according to the Ken Palm rankings, not only did Penn State have the most difficult strength of schedule in college basketball so far this year, they've had the most difficult strength of schedule so far in the 20 years or so of Ken Palm's rankings going back to the 2001-2002 season. And when I saw that, and I thought to myself, wait a second, now Penn State is playing the soft, cuddly, weak Michigan State Spartans. Dennis's pick is probably not going to be all that good. And looking at the score right now, it is it's a close game. I think it's 52-all.
Anybody's game.
Yep. But, of course, if you lay the 3 points for Michigan State, you're not looking good. It's razor thin for me because I picked Penn State to win that game straight up. But that was not my major wager. My major wager was on the Portland Trailblazers. Still an opportunity for you to bet this game. I think the game tips off at a little after 10 o'clock. They're playing the Orlando Magic. Evan Fournier is out for the Magic for the second straight game. Aaron Gordon has been out for the last week or so. Obviously, McCollum and Nurkic are still out, but they've been out for like 10 games. With these two big men out, in their last game on Saturday, the Orlando Magic got destroyed, and they've lost 4 out of their last 5 games. Each of those losses by at least 15 points. I think the Blazers should be able to easily cover that 6 points at home.
Go the other way, sounds like to me. All right, that's the major wager, and that's going to do it for this show here on February the 9th. Thanks, everybody, for watching, commenting, rating, doing all those things. We do have a Super Bowl winner for that program.
Ooh.
We will contact you, the Barry Sanders Game Day program. And coming up on Thursday's 5th chapter, if the Pistons do get the number 1 overall pick, who will they select? We'll tell you on Thursday's show. Thanks to Brian Jelinek for working the feed. Maybe we'll see him on Thursday, and we will see Brian Chapman on Thursday. And for Chap, I'm Dennis Fithy, and thanks for watching. We'll talk with you on Thursday.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the 5th chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spitting the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast.